I mean, imagine Louis XV, Queen Victoria, King Philip of Spain. Imagine what they're thinking now. They spent years conquering countries, savage wars, brutality, sending ships around the world to conquer lands untold. Imagine what they're thinking up there in the skies. I don't expect they went to heaven. They probably are down beneath us, thinking, what has Malta done to be currently chair or president of some 79 countries, representing 2.8 billion people across the world? And they've done it peacefully, that here they are sitting in charge of this great area of land which represents between 40 and 45% of the world's population. It's an amazing position Malta finds itself in just now. We're living in a transformative world, and that's why the relevance of what Malta is doing, or the position that it has, is so important. It has an opportunity, a massive opportunity, to take advantage of the roles it's in. It comes into a world where some people are retreating from globalization, and this, of course, is an entrepreneurial nation. It comes into a world where, as we all know, and I've witnessed here in Malta, where the populace are uprising and changing their governments, and we've moved into election campaigns which, frankly, are not very representative of what the world wants to see, if I can put it bluntly, or reasonably tactfully, shall I say that. And where there is just a sea change of attitudes towards trading relationships, towards government, towards governance, and the world is completely all over the place, largely without a leader. And so that presents a fantastic opportunity for those that are prepared to come up to the plate and show leadership. In my own country, we have made an absolutely dramatic change in the way that we're going to operate as a nation. America is going through a very restless and I think we could say conservatively an unpredictable attitude to its way it's governing. China is going through a recessionary period, even though it's still growing. It's re-evaluating its position and status in the world. And amongst it all, there seems to be no leadership. So what an opportunity for Malta. Let's first of all just talk for a minute, though, about the Commonwealth and the opportunity that provides for Malta, not just up till April, which will be the end of its 2-year of governance, but to build upon that 2-year of governance, of being chairman, and to take full advantage. For those that don't know, the Commonwealth represents 52 countries. It's a third of the world's population, a grouping of 2.3 billion people. Of course, India is the major popular component. They all speak English, which, for those of you who do speak English, know that it is so much easier to speak English than not, from a negotiation point of view. I recently hosted 15 of the young Chinese entrepreneurs, and a meeting that should have taken an hour took 2 hours, because during that meeting I had to stop the whole time to translate into Chinese. And there is something sort of extraordinary, wonderful to be able to speak the same language as those of you know from business, and that's why English is so important. It's underpinned by the rule of law, the Commonwealth. I have to say, not every country sticks to the rule of law within the Commonwealth, but there is a fundamental rule of law, largely laid down by the British, almost entirely with the exception of 2 countries, but the principles are there for that relationship. And then there is that subliminal aspect, which is all the shared values we've had being part of one larger expanded family, which the Queen is at its head. And those are things like sport, culture, and most importantly, education. Countless Maltese have been educated in the United Kingdom. Countless Brits have been over to Malta for its holiday, and you can't quite put your finger on the relevance to that, but what it builds is a genuine friendship between nations, as it does across the greater Commonwealth states. Malta's in Canada, Canadians here in Malta, same with Indians. It's just a great big Commonwealth family. Within that lies an opportunity and a statistic that proves that it is 16% more competitive dealing intra-Commonwealth than extra-Commonwealth. And that is what a pivotal position that the Commonwealth could hold for Malta. Sorry, excuse me a moment whilst I put this down. And then you have, of course, Malta's role within the European Union. How vital that is for Britain at the moment, to have some reasonableness at the top table amongst this aerial warfare where we have the likes of President Juncker leaking details of meetings with the Prime Minister, upping the rhetoric in a time where rhetoric doesn't need to be upped. I also would say the Brits are quite guilty of that as well. This aerial warfare that's happening, how good it is to have Malta, a great friend and ally of the United Kingdom, at the presidency at the moment, trying to bring some reasonableness to what is going to be a difficult negotiation. And how important it is for those countries that believe in a progressive, entrepreneurial, trading, open economy like Malta is, to have it as a buffer, or leadership as a buffer to the German dominance that is about to happen, or is happening subliminally within the European Union. And I think that alignment of countries behind a country like Malta, if they're prepared to show leadership and some form of reasonableness, is really the only way that the European Union is going to survive in the future. If reason is brought to the table and that there is change that we all know that has got to happen within the European Union. To date, the access to the European Union for all the Commonwealth countries has been through the United Kingdom. What an opportunity that presents for Malta now, as being in the European Union, with the UK out of it. Those Commonwealth countries wanting to trade with Europe will now be able to use Malta and, to a lesser extent, Cyprus as their access to the European Union. So these are incredibly important things. It's also important that Malta, with its free trade economy and with the backdrop of the United States and inevitably the United Kingdom becoming more relaxing the rules and regulations on finance, banking, insurance, as America have already started doing, as it seeks to regain its preeminence in the world in the finance and insurance and city-type world. How important it is, with the European Union tightening its regulation, that there is a counterbalance and an argument at the table that stops. What do people perceive of Malta? What do the rest of the world see as Malta? How does Malta see itself? And how is Malta going to take this opportunity? The world sees Malta, as I said earlier, as a trading, entrepreneurial nation. A nation that is open for business, a nation that has got a reasonable tax regime, that has a rule of law, and that is geographically incredibly well placed, with a link between Africa, the Middle East, and of course Europe. What a great place that is to be. And how important, therefore, it is that Malta adapts its economy from a manufacturing economy to a skilled economy, of which you in this room are so importantly positioned to take advantage of. The future for Malta, in my humble opinion, is of the high-skilled, high education areas of which you are very well placed to take advantage with your education system, with your global outreach, with your skilling up that you have here. And if the framework can be established by the new government to allow that to happen, I think Malta is strategically incredibly well placed. We all know that the world and life is about seizing opportunity. Those that seize the opportunity in this ever-changing world are going to have an incredibly great opportunity. Opportunity knocks, as they used to say in that television program, and it knocks hard for those that seize the opportunity, and in my opinion, it knocks hard for Malta. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Marland. Lord Marland would like to take a few questions now from the audience. We've got 10 minutes, so please put up your hand if you have any questions. And there should be a roving microphone coming your way. Well, while you think...
This is a great relief.
while you think of something, you mentioned Cyprus. There's a very interesting point you made there about once Britain's left the European Union, there'll still be two Commonwealth countries left in the EU, Malta and Cyprus. And you said that Cyprus, to a lesser extent than Malta, would also be a way into Europe. How would you compare Cyprus and Malta? Because to the outside world, there's not much difference. Two islands in the Mediterranean, both former British colonies, both presenting themselves as international financial centres.
Well, I think Cyprus is still recovering from the banking and financial crisis that it sustained. I was there recently and I was struck that it hasn't really been able to recover to the extent that most countries have. And I think that recovery process is is going to take a lot more time. Malta has recovered. It didn't have anything like as acutely as Cyprus did, and that's the fundamental reason behind it. I also think that there is not the same entrepreneurial focus. There's not the same radical change that's going on within the economy. There's not the same progressive outlook of their business people. A lot of them have left the country in order to trade elsewhere because it was impossible for them to carry on trading there. And I think they've got still a long way to go, whereas I don't think that's the same with Malta.
Mm-hmm. Now, a question here from the lady at the front. Is there a microphone? Yes, it's on its way. Please say who you are and where you're from, and keep your question as brief as possible, please.
Hi, I'm Deborah Webster. Half English, half Maltese, and your points were very interesting. I think
I'm glad someone thought so.
The cross-section between the EU and the Commonwealth I find fascinating. I don't think leadership in the country would reflect that. But I'm just curious, there's a lot of opportunity. What are the threats and the risks to those opportunities? What can put a spanner in the works, as so to speak?
I'm bound to say it, of course, because I'm British. I think the ever-increasing bureaucracy of the European Union is a threat. At some point, that tide has to be stopped, particularly for the open, progressive economies. And I think that Germany are in danger of having too powerful a position at the table, and I think it's very important that that is pushed back. The unpredictable nature of America, as I said earlier, is something that needs to be looked at quite carefully. They can, at the seemingly push of a Twitter button, change their attitude on a whole range of things. So I think those are two really important things. And I think finally, and you will all know this from your business, people invest in countries where they think they're safe and secure. And if Malta starts to become unsafe and unsecure, as the same with Britain and one or two of the other safe havens that are perceived, if that stops, then you will see there will be a change of attitude, as we have very dramatically and very quickly in a number of other countries.
Any further questions? Put your hand up if there are any. Lord Marland, on that particular point of spanner in the works, one thing that the European Commission is looking at is to raise the minimum tax base of countries in Europe. Now, the amount of tax they raise, which could threaten the tax advantages of Malta. Do you have a feel for how that's going in Europe, whether that will happen?
Well, I'm the wrong person to ask that because I don't really engage with Europe at the moment. But what I can tell you is it will be an absolute disaster if that happens. Because, as we all know with taxation, it rarely goes down. And if you start moving it up, it changes the rules of engagement, and I think would have a dramatic effect on the places like Malta, Ireland, and one or two other countries, particularly where America are reducing dramatically their corporation tax. In the United Kingdom, it's down to the lowest in G20, and the entrepreneurial economies, of which Malta is one, are moving to and understand the benefits of a low taxation economy.
Mm. Anyone with any questions?
Me again.
So
Since Malta's financial centre, how important, what are the potential negative consequences of poor governance, lack of transparency, and greyness of corruption?
Well, I think the importance here is that you have a very strong regulator, and I believe you have. I think in Joe Bannister you've got a very strong regulator. The regulator has got to continue to show his teeth, to be selective about the people that are allowed into Malta, because in the end people will view it as a place of quality, and I know a number of people in this room who represent incredibly high quality organisations. Maintaining that rather than allowing it just to become a tax haven, it wants to be a quality tax haven which brings in people who invest in the economy, not just financially, but in skills. The transfer of skills is an incredibly important thing to a growing economy. From what I see of Malta, I see it as a very transparent economy.
well, thank you, Lord Marland. That's all we have time for.